Our disability is our greatest strength. It gives us a supervision to see the issues facing humanity from a more inclusive perspective and the grit to fight back against all odds. Welcome to Super Adaptables, the More Than Walking Video podcast discussion. Welcome to Super Adaptables, the podcast where people of all abilities gather to discuss pressing issues that affect the disability community and their implications for the world at large. We are your host. I am Corey Pheez, C4 complete quadriplegic since 2005.
And I'm Jonathan Sigworth, C7 complete quadriplegic since 2006, both of us hailing from the great state of Connecticut.
Yes, sir, and we are recording this on Thursday, the 8th of January, 2026. Happy New Year. And in a little bit, we'll be discussing accessible democracy, a fragile promise.
Fragile indeed, Corey. I know we were originally supposed to be recording this back in December. Part of me is a little glad that we waited because just kind of recent events in Venezuela, around the world, the U.S. trying to take over Greenland. I mean, the idea of the value of democracy, what it means, its implications, the different threats that it faces around the world and here at home, and how to make it accessible and what are the barriers to it. That's kind of what we're trying to discuss. And also, like, internally, like, what are our views about democracy? What's the skepticism that we have or have grown to have? Like, is it something we even believe in anymore? What's the argument for it? What are we hearing? How do we own this system that in the United States anyway, we're kind of like born into, and really own it and fight for it and try to perfect it and make it better. So that's what we're talking about today. But before we get into it, just a reminder, Super Adaptables is made possible in part by a grant from the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation's National Paralysis Resource Center. The information provided and opinions expressed in these podcasts do not necessarily reflect the views of the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation. For more information about the Foundation's National Paralysis Resource Center, visit www.christopherreeve.org. Also, I should note that the views expressed on this podcast do not necessarily reflect those of More Than Walking either, but belong to us as individual speakers.
Yeah, so, when, we started talking about what we wanted to have a topic on and accessible democracy, I think it means so many things, right? But I started thinking about, like, one of the first things we kind of do with the democratic process is we talk about where we stand in terms of our allegiance to our particular country, our particular place where we live. And so I did a little research and I found out that in 1885, Captain George Thatcher Balch, a Union Army officer during the Civil War, he wrote the original Pledge of Allegiance for the United States, which was later revised in 1892 by Francis Bellamy, a Baptist minister. The pledge provokes many debatable themes such as patriotism and nationalism, to name a few. But perhaps no greater concept implied is the belief that the people of a nation have a voice and can and should remain indivisible with liberty and justice for all.
And the pledge emphasizes a key component as evidenced in the words, "and to the republic for which it stands." Democracy is upheld by the people. We hold the power when we elect representatives, as in a republic, to Congress by voting to reflect the wants and needs of every corner of our country. Democracy is delicate, and keeping it from breaking takes everyone involved to purposefully maintain its structure. If we are to appeal to the national interest of our country or the government, our country must keep its oath to intentionally make its rights equal and accessible to all its citizens.
Indeed. And with that, we want to welcome all of our other Super Adaptables with us today as we call on you. Say hello, your name, where you're calling in from, your disability, if you have one, and briefly, what is your favorite season and why? Tahira.
Yes, Tahira Johnson. Incomplete C4, C5 since 2007. let's see, what else? Favorite season?
Oh, and where you're from.
Oh, I'm from Chicago, Illinois originally. I live in Oklahoma City. Been here for many years now, since my injury, actually. And favorite season, I think, is spring. I think spring is just a time for hope, and it's not quite so unbearably hot here in Oklahoma. So,
Time for hope.
yeah.
I like that. That's really cool. Harley.
I'm Harley. I'm a C7 incomplete quadriplegic, have been since my 19th birthday in 1994. I'm currently in the state of Texas, and I actually have two favorite seasons, spring and autumn, both for the very colorful array of beauty that nature gives us. Spring, I start getting very energetic. And for me, autumn, just, I don't know, there's just something magical that makes me want to decorate, bake, and cook, and just cozy up with a nice cup of coffee in front of the fireplace.
Nice. Thank you. John, what's your favorite season?
Oh my gosh. I would say spring, except the whole time change thing, man. It's brutal. I hate it. It's got to be summer for me. Um, I love just being able to go outside and not feel cold. Being being in Connecticut, it's like don't want the don't want the summer to end until the end of the summer, and then you're like, whew, man, I'm glad that's over with. Um, Too hot. So, how about you, Corey?
Yeah, so growing up, it used to be the fall. It was nice, to put on a nice outfit as far as like, a sweater, cardigan, um, any of those type of things. And just the way that things start to change, the leaves are falling, and fall can be a real pretty time here in New England. But now that I've become very sensitive to the weather, it is the summer. I could stay June 22nd or 21st, whatever the summer starts, that can run 85 degrees all year round. I'll just go into AC if I need to be cooled down. So it definitely, I would say, is the summer for me.
Hmm. Although I must say that like the summers have become more unbearable, where it's like days I would have been outside, I just can't. So hopefully, who knows? Maybe spring and fall will become a little more old summer like, and we'll get rid of those time changes eventually. And but anyway,
Or in our democratic society, we can try to do something about climate change. I don't know.
oh, very very good point.
Maybe none of such things are out. But yeah, no, that's cool. Thank you guys for just expressing those expressions about the summer and fall and different seasons that you enjoy. So we'll just jump right into it. So again, we're talking about accessible democracy, which a clinical definition, it really refers to the movement and legal framework aimed at ensuring all eligible citizens, particularly those with disabilities, can participate fully, privately, and independently in the electoral process and civic life. This includes removing physical, systemic, and informational barriers to voting and running for office. That's just a clinical Google search definition. But what's more important, I think, is what does accessible democracy mean to you? And do you have concerns about election integrity becoming compromised when it comes to accessibility, such as mail-in ballots or accessible polling places? John, you take that first.
Sure. I mean, I encourage everyone to do this. I want to look at the word accessible in a very broad way, like not just thinking about disability accessibility, but like accessing democracy for everyone, whether you have a disability or not. And kind of taking these disability community terms and really applying it to all of society can be a useful exercise. So accessible democracy means to me like it should be easy to vote. Um, it should we should have like days off of work in order to go out and vote. Like a lot of countries have national holidays, or like, you know, they have a holiday, like a day off when they go and vote in elections, and the U.S. doesn't, which is an interesting thing. Um, Being able to access the information to be able to vote um, in an informed way, being able to shield yourself from being bombarded by endless ads and being shielded by different moneyed interests. It should not be an accessible democracy is not one in which um, those with the most money win the argument in terms of like who you should vote for. Um, and so that's why, like, for the second part of the question, my concerns about election integrity being compromised when it comes to accessibility is, yes, like mail-in ballots being demonized, polling places being reduced in number, hours being cut. That, of course, makes them less accessible. But it's also like broader issues, like, laws determining how much, billionaires can donate for a candidate, or the lack of transparency for funding for different campaigns. Um, we hear of politicians trying to buy elections or hand out monetary prizes if you vote for this person, like bribe adjacent kind of things that are very dangerous. So that's kind of what it means to me, and kind of my concern about it. How about you, Corey?
Yeah, so for me, when you talk about accessible democracy and broadening the term accessible, it makes me think about the ability to freely do it, right? As you know, I've been reading Democracy and Its Alternatives by Ethan Hollander, and he lends a lot of perspective to things that I never really fully took into account when it comes down to democracy, right? So when we talk about its accessibility, everybody needs to fully and freely participate in it. Well, you know, there are countries out there, in fact, there are 22 of them, such as like Argentina, Australia, Belgium, Bolivia, Brazil, where you have access to democracy because it's actually mandatory to vote. And you can be fined as a result if you don't vote, right? So then you think about, okay, here it is. It's open to everybody because it's making everybody, which can also change, like make your voter turnout much higher, but it doesn't make it more accessible at the same token. So I want to be able to, as somebody with a disability, feel like when I go cast my ballot, that it's actually being counted and there's no misinformation or trying to misdirect or trying to somehow coerce me to not want to vote because I have distrust in the system and whatnot. I want candidates to be able to present themselves just as they are, without um, creating a bias in me as a voter or anybody else because somebody has donated $10 million to their campaign, which allows them to out campaign the next person. Just take the issues as they are. And that to me is what really makes it accessible, is when we can get our facts straightforward. Um, I do have concerns about election integrity, but not so much with the methods that we could possibly use. Like, for example, when we typically vote, it's in terms of the general election, it's cold. We just talked about the seasons and whatnot. I don't want to leave my house to necessarily have to stand in line, right? I wouldn't have no problem if I was still able-bodied, but I don't want to have to leave my house. And I would love to have a secure website that I could cast my vote. And it's locked in. You give me a PIN number that's auto-generated, and you can verify it like that, and I can go select who I want and cast my ballot right in my district. That would, to me, simplify everything instead of me driving up, wait. I sometimes, even with like it being accessible, like the last election, like I had to still wait in line, fill out the ballot in the car, wait for somebody to come make sure everything was good, and then put it in a box. It still was time consuming, right? So, but I think it can be more compromised when we spread misinformation and disinformation about the validity of the actual process. Harley, I'd love for you to weigh in on that question.
I'm kind of right but with both of you gentlemen. The accessibility for those in rural areas, especially when you have retired people, people with disabilities, it's hard to get to the voting places. For me, for example, down here in the little tiny town I'm in Texas, is their buses, their mass transit got defunded greatly. And so it takes me 2 weeks to get a bus. And even then, I mean, I can't even get a bus hardly at all anymore. So, there goes my accessibility or access to the voting place. Um, the good thing is, though, the voting place is indoors. So even if there's a long line, it's wrapped around the building inside. So, I mean, it's still, protected from the elements. And people are very helpful here. If you need any type of assistance due to a disability or your age, they are on top of things, trying to help you out, make sure you're taken care of. Another thing down here, it's absolutely God and country down here. I went to a meet and greet for someone running for an office coming up in the elections this autumn. And first thing, 5 minutes into the time slot of when this event was starting, they stopped everybody and they did a prayer. Every event that I've been to, no matter how large a venue it is, they stop the entertainment and they say a prayer to open up the event. And then they say the Pledge of Allegiance. Then they say the Pledge of Texas. And it's amazing to see such patriotism down here. It's not like what I'm used to. I do miss the Pledge of Allegiance in classrooms. I think that was a very vital thing to do every morning because it set the tone for the entire day of these children. It gave them something to look up to, something to strive for, something to protect, something with integrity and honor. And I think a lot of that's been lost throughout the years. And I really, really think that they not necessarily the prayer in schools, because I respect everybody having a different religious, a religious discipline, different beliefs. So maybe not necessarily bring back prayer, but definitely the Pledge of Allegiance. I mean, that is so needed. One of my favorite history books, it's actually got a fabric cover. It's from the 1950s, and it has so many more things in it than any history book nowadays. I mean, this one actually has folk songs in it towards the back chapters. It talks about Paul Revere and how he was not the only writer the night that the lanterns were lit. So I love looking at older history books and seeing the differences between how education was versus how it is. And it bothers to see that I really honestly don't believe that our votes count as much as we think they do. I want to believe it, but from the evidence I've seen, I doubt it. I really doubt our votes count entirely as we think they do.
Yeah, I mean, you point to a number of things. Talking about public transportation, how there's so many different factors and support systems that enable you to cast a ballot in the first place. One reason I forgot to mention this at the outset, this is our last kind of topic on the series of social safety nets. The reason being that an accessible democracy is the ultimate social safety net. And how do you get any of these other programs if your voice isn't heard and if your vote can't be counted? But also furthermore, this is the only mechanism by which we have to create these things. And so even as you say, public transportation or doubts on whether they count or not, these are barriers that we have to figure out how to overcome and how to address. Otherwise, we're giving it up. And I love the sentiment, of the Pledge Allegiance. I didn't realize it left. At least
It's optional.
it is optional. Okay.
It's kind of like optional, like, and it's funny not to cut you off because my son, my youngest, he was just complaining about it. It's just like, it's so dumb. I don't understand why we have to do it. I had to explain to him. I said, before you call something like dumb or trivial or whatever, at least understand why you're doing it.
Okay. I mean, so it's optional. In other words, like, we're not suspending or expelling kids who don't say it, but it's still it's still being sounded.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, but I love that we started this conversation with it. That idea of like owning our democracy. Yeah, we should take a look at that Pledge of Allegiance and like, what does it really mean? And do our current politics and a way of looking at elections and the skepticism we look at voters, are we really reflecting the values that we're pledging our allegiance to? Tahira, would love for you to join in on this question.
Yeah, I think that's a good point you made, Jonathan, about having how some countries have the whole day off to go and vote. And for some people, that's pretty, 7 to 7, I think is usually when people can vote, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. But if someone works full time and they have a family, that's kind of a squeeze if you have to work the whole day and then you have kids or whatever. And and people have pushed for that. People have had petitions and whatnot to make that a holiday so that people have the whole day to go and vote. And then also the point of like public transportation. And I live in downtown Oklahoma City, and voting is a block and a half away, so that's not a problem. And I also live near the transportation hub as well. But that's a good point. And then I don't know how accessible all of them are. Oh, and also what was said about being in a small town or a rural area, if someone doesn't have a reliable car, that's pretty challenging. And then here, I believe it's a woman I know here who's paralyzed and she is blind. She helped push through for Oklahoma, allowing mail-in ballots for the blind, for the visually impaired. But I think that might be the only case. Oklahoma's really against mail-in ballots. They've kind of gotten on board with this whole, it's corrupt and people aren't really, they're undocumented immigrants or whatever and voting. And so they're really against mail-in ballots. So I think it's just the visually impaired right now who can do that. But that would really help a lot of rural area people in small towns. And I don't know, Harley, were you saying that you're in Paris, Texas?
Yes, I did. I'm only 3.5 hours south of you.
Okay, so do you take the Paris the Metro bus service?
A lot of the stops here are not wheelchair accessible, so I can't take the main bus. And they went from having 4 buses down to 2, so it's not even reliable right now. And for paratransit, they went from 6 drivers down to 2 because of defunding. And so when I call, they open their phone lines at 8 a.m. By 8:05, it's already booked 2 weeks out, and it's a miracle if I can even get just a one-way bus trip to anywhere.
And are you able to get to the bus stop that's near you? Like, is that accessible? Or is it nearby? Now, when you say not accessible, does that mean no curb cut? Or?
Exactly. That's no curb cut out, and it's in the grass, and if it's in... And around here, we have sandy soil, so you don't know if that grass is solid or if you're going to sink when you're in a 400-pound chair.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm also in a power chair that weighs 384, so close to that. But I thought that, now, do the buses all have, I imagine they all have the ramp. So you can wheel on, but it's the stops that are not always accessible.
I'm currently an advocate here in Paris, and I'm fighting to get sidewalks installed. I already got some sidewalks installed on one street. We're currently we just got a new ADA coordinator, so now I got to bring this person up to speed on what we've been doing the past 2 years.
Right.
There's a transition plan from 2016 that nobody really knew about until they were going through some old files and discovered it. So we're having to like catch up on what was the information, stuff like that. I mean,
Well, also in Oklahoma City, it's called Embark, and they have a policy that if a stop is not accessible, the driver may stop at any place that is safe for someone with a disability to get onto the bus. So that may be something you could introduce and use, Oklahoma City and other places as an example, that if it's not accessible, you can still, because I think that violates the ADA if you just can't take the bus because the stop near you doesn't have a curb cut.
it does, but down here it's still like 1950 something.
Right. That's right.
I've called the administrator of the bus company and numerous times. They've never called back. So once the weather warms, because we're having a severe thunderstorm right now, and we're ready to have a cold front. But as soon as the weather is tolerable, I'm going to go camp out in their shop and in their office until somebody talks to me, because this is ridiculous.
Right.
And their paratransit buses are more like vans. They hold only one wheelchair.
Oh, wow.
Two, if you're lucky, and they're the little tiny compact wheelchairs. Otherwise, I can barely fit my either just a regular power chair, and there's barely room for me and my service dog.
And the paratransit, does paratransit take you to a voting place?
Yeah, it's door to door anywhere within.
Oh, really?
Anywhere within the county. But like I said, they recently got defunded, so we went from having 6 drivers down to 2, and these 2 drivers have to take care of everything from 8 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon across an entire county.
No, that's ridiculous.
There's over 271 miles of roadway in this county.
I spoke to a family in Texas earlier today. Son was shot, and they weren't able to get inpatient rehab because they didn't have access to Medicaid. The mother had to lose her job in order to take care of her son, lost the insurance from her work, and because Texas doesn't have expanded Medicaid, they have to wait for the spinal cord injured son to get approved for Social Security disability before he can get access to Medicaid. And meanwhile, he's dealing with pressure sores and other things. And it's just,
wow.
You need curb cuts, you need sidewalks, you need paratransit, you need health insurance. Like the fact that mail-in ballots just for the blind, like all the people who are sick in the hospital, stuck at home,
right.
There's so many reasons why that is so wrong. And looking at the history of how, there's such an unequal rollout of disability rights, with oftentimes the blind community getting things first and people with mobility disabilities getting them much later. That's very sad.
Yeah, Paris no longer has a hospital. It's just a medical center now. Yeah. And I spoke to someone that they went there for emergency services because they fell, and they told them that, you have a fracture in your spine down in the lumbar area, and go home, put a hot compress on it, and take some Tylenol. And it's like, are you kidding?
Yeah.
The nearest hospital is like 2 hours away. And I told that person, if you can find transportation, get your butt down to a real hospital, go to, say Trauma 1. And that is not something to play around with, because you can have spinal shock, which where the spinal cord swells, and that could take up to 48 hours. And then it's too late. You're paralyzed. You're in a home all by yourself. Who's going to help you?
No, and so this kind of brings us to question 2, and we do have a hard stop at 7, so we're going to try to roll through it. But with so much distrust in the government, to what extent are we as a society and as individuals responsible for what happens at both the national and local levels in regards to, let's just say, accessible democracy, all of the different components that we're talking about, whether it's curb cuts, mail-in ballots, who's elected, the information, misinformation, what should our like mindset be of like, is this our responsibility? Do we need to do something about it? What can we do about it? Who do we go to advocate for change? All of the above. I know it's a kind of big question, but Corey would love to get your take on it.
Sure. So, look, the driving factor behind, I think a question, excuse me, like this, uh, deals a lot with voter responsibility. And I think when we're speaking about accessible democracy, we don't really look at what our responsibilities are as a voter. So again, just going back to the book Democracy and Its Alternatives, Ethan Hollander, which he's a political science professor at I think Warwickshire um, University or something to that effect. But he has a lecture in it which is equivalent like chapter 8 called Voters and the Dangers of Too Much Democracy, right? He talks about voter ignorance and voter apathy. Um, because you had read an article where it shows that 40% of Americans they can't name their congressional representatives, and to some degree, it indicates that many people don't know who or what they're voting for, which can be concerning, right? And then but then generally speaking, we have the ability to understand like issues when we understand partisan politics. So you may not be able to articulate the ins and outs of a particular bill, but as long as you know, okay, this representative may have showed up on a Republican ticket or a Democratic ticket, you get an understanding of where they are. So then it allows you to vote on those issues. But I wonder if we ought to be more informed before we go into the booth. Because if we go into the booth and we're just checking off whomever is on the ballot because I'm a registered Democrat or you're a registered Republican, that kind of does a disservice to the whole community because when decisions like curbside cuts, what's going on with transportation, you in effect, to some degree, put that person in office if that person when they're campaigning, they were never challenged on some of those issues. And so you also have, and I kind of alluded to this earlier, is that you have also voter apathy, which essentially it's just a lack of interest or motivation among eligible voters to participate in an election. And currently, as if you use data from like 2024, 2025, it's it's a big issue that undermines the perceived legitimacy of democratic systems, right? So you have this apathetic attitude that's like, yo, I'm not even going to go to the polls, even if I am a registered voter. And then you also have voter ignorance where you don't really know enough, but then we'll get upset with the government and say, well, why aren't more things happening? So I think as individuals, we bear some responsibility about the people we put in office when it comes directly from our districts at both the federal and state levels. John, what's your take?
I couldn't say it better. I think you're absolutely right. The the way to fix, I think, things at the societal level or leaders that we don't agree with is to own the responsibility as individual voters. Like that when you take that pledge, from a young age, and you're teaching your kids, like, what does that pledge mean? It means like you're pledging your allegiance, but you're also acknowledging your responsibility to take part and make sure that this happens, um, to make sure that this is a just, fair, equitable society. And the way you do that is by being informed and by voting. And also by communicating your needs and what needs done, like Harley's doing in her area, to your elected officials. Because otherwise, what are we complaining about if we're not vocalizing and fighting for what we see around us? Um, Tahira, I'm going to pass it on to you.
Yes, and you do make a good point about people not being informed. And I will admit, I'm one of those people. I have a neighbor who really keeps up on politics, local politics, and he writes articles on it. And our views are real similar, align quite a bit. So I will just text him for his information, and I have done so at the polling place. Like, Marty, what
That's great.
and he'll just zap me over the article he wrote, and then I'll read that and vote on that. And it's nice that he'll also say why he did or didn't vote for someone, because I don't always make the same choices he does, but he kind of flushes things out. But yeah, so I went to law school, right? Back in the day. So, and I still just down to, I'm like, whatever Marty said, that's fine. So yeah, no, I don't really stay informed. I mean, on some things I do, but then on other things, I'm also locally. Oklahoma is the reddest state in the country, so it's kind of hard to, you vote for someone, but there's no way they're going to win. It's like the other party gets 75% of the vote, and so I'll still vote, but they just don't really have a chance of. There was a Democrat for. The governor was a Democrat about 15 years ago, but since then, the governor and the mayor, the Republican always wins. So
they call that in his book tyrannical majority. So if you get over 50% of the votes as a majority, you don't necessarily know what what the issues are, or even if they're going to be addressed, especially if it's just along party lines. So it greatly affects change, if it's going to happen or not.
But I do stay involved as far as the public transportation in Oklahoma City, and some of the city council meetings. They don't normally meet when I can go, but I will do. So I stay involved in some things that are really make a big difference to the disabled, whether they're Democrats or Republicans. And the bus system has gotten a lot better here in the past 10, 15 years. So there have been some improvements, but I guess despite, whether or not I agree with what the government's doing or whether I trust them, at least on a local level, I feel like I can have some input.
Well, and you make a good point. Gerrymandering is another issue that we're kind of embroiled in on both sides. That threatens, as Harley pointed out, like our votes not being counted or being diluted one way or another. But I think that is one way of being informed, is having a trusted source, having an informed friend, perhaps, who you trust and you've looked into. You have a relationship with that person, so you should, before you listen to their opinion, you should understand pretty well where they're getting their opinions from and how they form them. But obviously, we all can't be on all the different councils all the time, everywhere at once. So finding those shortcuts is a really important way to do that.
I think we have a great responsibility as voters. If you vote somebody in because you believe what they state is going to be done and they fail to do so, have them impeached immediately. You can impeach your state representative for that matter. So, I mean, you can go even as low as your city council members. Understand the processes. For me, I mean, I'm getting rather well known. The mayor likes to see me when I come to a city council meeting. I totally startled them for the last meeting of the year. I made sure I was there to thank them for allowing me to volunteer with the city council and with the city and bring forth the issues of the community. I'm kind of like the liaison between the people and the city council members. And so, people always go to city council meetings to complain. Well, I'm the type where I might go with a complaint, but I'm going to go with a solution as well. And since I actually got results and I was welcomed, my opinions, my expertise was welcomed, I thank them for allowing me to give them the education and the knowledge that I have and the experiences that I've had over the past 31 years of being in a chair. And so, they came up to me afterwards. Thank you. We don't usually get compliments. We don't usually get thanked for things, but we're trying our best. And so I think it's really important to get involved. Start at your city level. If you can, volunteer for your city in some capacity, great or small. It makes a difference because sooner or later you will get recognized by someone else, and then that voice carries on, and it's the good old-fashioned word of mouth. it does bear weight. And then, like I stated, it is the voter's responsibility. If a politician is not holding up to what they said they would do for the people, get them out of there. Set an example. They're not holding to their word. Therefore, we want them out and we will make sure they go out. And once they realize that they do work for the people and not the people work for them, that's where true change comes in, because that is the foundation of democracy, is the government works for us.
People power, baby. People power. We are the boss.
We always have been, and people have forgotten that.
Yes. And it's easy to forget when we feel so powerless, right? It's easy to forget when it's hard to figure out what's going on and it's hard to see the results of that little piece of paper you fill out,
Another thing is, sorry to interrupt, they stopped teaching cursive in a lot of schools.
Oh, yeah.
Why did they do that?
Oh, yeah.
Because if a child cannot read the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution, they are easier to manipulate and control.
And people don't write like they used to. People type, and I hardly ever write. I mean, it's kind of outmoded. It is becoming outmoded.
We need to bring back real cursive font. That's what you.
Oh, great! These kids are going to be like, "You old fogies, go away."
But you know what I mean? You guys are making like very, very great points. And one of the things that we got to understand in terms of like believing in this idea of democracy, which I think it is definitely something that can continue if we aren't sheltered from the information, or if you're not if you just take some time out and read a little bit. I mean, there's audiobooks. You don't have to pick up a book anymore. You can literally like listen to it. If you just educate yourself, you can see where you're in possession of so much of the power. And it's true. I don't want to fumble something that I read recently, but essentially those who are in power, especially when they're developing like a constitution or declaration or anything like that, a lot of times they focus on the individuals who they feel can be the most intelligent person in society to make the decisions on behalf of society. So if I don't allow people of color to vote, make it harder for people with disabilities to vote, if I don't allow women to vote, people that were deemed, hundreds of years ago, not intelligent enough to go out there and say, this is what I think should happen, then guess what? I can keep the power in this rotating cycle, right? That's where democracy breaks down at. That's why authoritarian regimes, albeit, if you have a solid leader of any particular country and the person is actually doing right by the people, there are different alternatives, I would say. But generally speaking, I'm not advocating for that. But when you have people in position that want folks to actually demonstrate their needs and they just want to carry it out, that is what keeps me optimistic, because I'm on a call with individuals who are really looking into it. And shout out to Marty. We need more Martys in our life.
Right.
Absolutely. I mean, and to that point, Corey, it's inherent in a belief in democracy is the belief that all of our voices matter, even the voices that we vehemently disagree with, even the lifestyles that we vehemently disagree with, the belief systems we vehemently disagree with. We all have a right to exist, to coexist, and to participate. And, minority voices are protected, majority voices are balanced. Like, that is how the system is supposed to be set up, where there's equal representation, equal opportunity for all, not just for our group. And it's something we can be blind to even within our disability community, even within our advocacy groups. Something we have to, keep challenging ourselves. Like, how inclusive are we being? As we're fighting for disability rights, are we in solidarity with other rights issues? Like, it's all interconnected. But Harley, your final thoughts on why you still believe in democracy or not?
Because I'm an American, plain and simple. If it wasn't for, being in this country and understanding history, number one is read your history. People need to unplug. That's the number one thing. Technology, TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, it's made people stupid because the mind capacity has shrank greatly because, 30 seconds, 60 seconds, maybe 90 seconds on some videos, and that's it. And then you're on to the next one, on to the next one. Where's the retention? Where's the knowledge outside of those platforms? People need to seek it out and they need to look back and reflect back on a lot of things. Some of these politicians have been doing politics for 40 plus years. Okay, go back to that person's beginnings. What were they like then? What did they stand for then? Do your homework. And, it falls back on us. We are the foundation of this country. And when people ask me, are you Democrat or Republican? I'm neither. I'm an American. I vote for whoever does right for the people. That's it. I don't care about a person's political party. I go by what their beliefs are and what they believe for the people.
Awesome. Thank you. Tahira, last word.
I would really say I focus a bit more on the local, and people talk about, is this the end of the democracy experiment, basically, with some of the things that are going on right now in society? I don't know, but yeah, I'm not so sure about all of that. I have mixed feelings about it, but certainly, locally I try to help people and try to make some impact on what can be done, for the disabled and for vulnerable people in general. Try to do something.
So you're still pro democracy?
I think
Not so
so.
sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Or benevolent dictatorship? Is that what you're leaning towards?
No, I really don't like that, and I don't think we have one that's very benevolent either. But definitely not the malevolent.
No one wants malevolent.
But yeah, I think it's always a lot of people haven't really gotten much benefit from it. Certainly, I think if more people could benefit from it, I would be more supportive of that. We live in a society that eats up a lot of people, kind of chews up a lot of people. So I would be for a lot of changes. But yeah, in that case, absolutely.
Yeah, democracy definitely not as it is, but as
Right.
the ideal that we have to fight for. And
As an ideal, yes.
We have not reached.
Right.
Definitely not believing in the current broker system.
Yes.
But Corey, how about you close us out?
Yeah, absolutely. No, this was very grateful, helpful, and insightful discussion, as always, and I'm always, going to be appreciative of taking time out to talk these things over. Yeah, I mean, accessible democracy is just, open up the door and let everyone through, and give them the opportunity to be heard when much of the time, we tend to go silent. So, thank you guys for participating in this More Than Walking video podcast discussion.
Stay tuned in and sign up for the More Than Walking newsletter at morethanwalking.com to learn about the topic we will cover next and how you can participate. The podcast will be changing a little bit this year, so look forward to that. Also, like, comment, and subscribe to our More Than Walking YouTube channel to watch each podcast, and click that notification bell so you are alerted when new episodes drop. Follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. Just search for More Than Walking or Super Adaptables.
Yes, sir. Until then, remain encouraged, stay hopeful, and above all else,
Keep adapting.